The quest could also be, I got to get up this morning, go to work, and I got this challenge at work, and I got this. I have to say something though, because things have been going the way they should be, and then I'm going to deal with that, and then I'm going to come back, and if I have a partner, I'm going to talk with them. Otherwise, I maybe write something in my journal. That's a mini quest. So I like that I put up the letting, because that's relates to your Kung Fu a little bit too. So letting go, transforming, returning. I can ask a parent there, what does a little child do at one point? They cling on to you. You bring your child. Think back, you're the age, you're a little younger, but around the age of your child. So they cling to you. And then there's someone there, they let go, they kind of walk, and the person maybe goes, ooh, and then they run back to you. And then they go out again, they kind of peek. They're constantly coming back to their safety. They're letting go a little bit. They're venturing out into the unknown. Very scary. You'll see that with very young children at playgrounds. 2 years old for sure. One, forget about it, they're not going to walk off. But, and it depends on the child again. It depends, which we'll get into, the temperament of the child. But it's actually the first stage. So we do this as humans. We do this already around 2 years old. We do that. We venture out from the security. You know this. And you may not remember it, but if you have children, you know this. It's the letting go, getting a little bit more confident, going back. So sometimes that refusal can take a while, and then eventually we go. Okay, so it's the call to venture that. And so these are some examples where you see that, right? The hero's journey, the call to venture, he's preparing for the flood, which is preparing for the future. I'm not going to go deep into these stories. The hero journey, the Buddha, of course, leaving the safety of the palace, right? Encountering sickness, old age, and death, bringing that back, transforming, coming to his insights. So these are part of these journeys, right? And these, of course, high level, a little more familiar. I don't know. I wouldn't go too much in debate who's the star of the movie. I understand what you're saying. I think everyone, to a certain degree, you had the clear evil, you had the good. So you had the good, the bad, right? And then you had the transformation, which all the hobbits, 3 hobbits, right? They were on, I believe it. They all went through a personal transformation. Definitely. They all came back with something else, right? Yeah. But once again, you will sometimes take parts in other people's quests. Actually, not sometimes. You always will, unless you're living isolated, right? So we are definitely part of people's quests, but then we have our own quest. Okay, so movies obviously are adaptations, and there are kind of like but also all superhero stories have the same, right? It's never clear cut also, right? It's also like Batman has a dark side to him. Yeah, that's supposedly I heard recently from that's why Superman kind of became less famous, so they had to come back, I guess, with what's his name, the actor, but because he just became too powerful, nothing, could stop him anymore. He didn't really have any dark side to it. And Batman always has that, the recent one as well, there's kind of that dark side to it as well. So that's a shadow side that Jung talks about. So these are some examples. And there's also often a snake involved, right? A serpent involved, or a dragon involved. Right? So it's the things in life you fear most. And if you cut them down when they're still small, they're small, right? And there's always one around. And the sooner you cut them down, you don't let them grow and get too big. And that's what we do. We wait too long, we let them grow, they get big, and the dragon becomes bigger. So there's that. You can kind of choose how long you should refuse these calls to a venture. And there's always some monsters around. But when they're little, you can kick them and jump, but when they get big, and then they become more fearful. So the Dark Knight is so here I did add the suffering. In a way, it is kind of suffering. And these are the three main causes of, I try to use the word, actually stress and fears and suffering will be enough, but I like to put a challenge. So external, and there's obviously a category in each one. So external events, nature, what are they? Diseases, sickness, death, old age, tornadoes. Things that really you can't hold people that much responsible for, right? Wouldn't really be fair. There's terrible things. That's why I added suffering, obviously. Most people will encounter, if you haven't already, some degree of suffering in their life.
Will war be conducted as that, or is society?
It's a war I would put in society. Yeah, that's not something, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah, just because you got stuck in it against your will or whatever, it doesn't mean it's natural. Natural is really old age, diseases, sicknesses, because I'll get to the society, maybe then become clear. Natural disasters, maybe accidents, kind of, there's obviously a thing where they go a little bit parallel, because I mean, you're not going to get hit and caught by a car if you live out in the jungle. So is it natural, is society? So certain things, but there's still accidents. There's still accidents. So society, don't underestimate that. Obviously, we have to bend to a certain degree to society, and that society could even be your own household. Your household, your culture, your religion, the place you're living. Obviously, it's very different here than, for example, in a communist country, or our Islamic country, or our Texas America, right? So very different societies, and everyone, even in Western society, we have our creative mind and our spirit, and you have that very much as a child, but then you have to follow certain rules and regulations, and you could say that's kind of like compressed a little bit, suppressed a little bit, right? We can't always do the things we want to, and actually the more creative you are, and I know there's some maybe all of you, but some that I know of, maybe everyone here, very creative people, and creative people find it more challenging, right? You have conscientious people, or like become bookkeepers or bankers and stuff, and then you have people more on the creative side who obviously want to just be creative and out themselves in any way they like. So society can really put a lot of pressure on that. I mean, we do have to mold ourselves to a certain degree. I mean, society can be hard enough that people commit suicide because they can't just accept the cultural or the religious or the way the country is run and the rules and the regulations. That can be overwhelming. But we just say, I can't deal with society and the other people that are acting within the society. Is that clear? Does that people understand what I mean with society? And that is something very different.
Yes.
And the last one has, of course, yes, something to do with the other two to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Not the result of it. So obviously, I think we all know that we sometimes do things that maybe we shouldn't have done. The younger we are, the more, of course, because that's when society hasn't compressed us. But don't underestimate that also as grown-ups. You could also say not reaching your full potential and being all that you could be, without sounding too American here, is also something you're doing to yourself. Are you really going for that? And that could be anything. Eh? That doesn't mean you have to have a certain position in society. If, like I said, if parent is your goal and you do that in a loving way, you're the best parent you could be. If you're a garbage man, if you're working at McDonald's, so there's no judgment on income or status. I'm not looking at that. It's purely, do you feel you've really stepped out to your calling, answered to your calling, resisted the refusal, and won on that quest? Are you really where you could be? And not because, I could, but I got fought. No, okay, there's that part. We dealt with society. And it's like, well, yeah, of course I would have had my house if the tornado didn't wipe it around. So no, not looking at that. Just as an individual, are you really where you could be? At this moment, not where we could still also be, because we're all always growing. So, but I'm working, I'm learning. Okay, then you're doing at this moment everything you can do. So it doesn't mean, obviously, once you're 30 and then you're where your full potential. I like to see that I'm still growing in that direction, that I haven't reached that. It's kind of a, how do you say the English, terugtrekkende receding? Is that, receding's English, right? I'm American, just so you know. You may have noticed. I've been here for 45 years. So ebb and fluid, right? So something pulls back. You could say these journeys are often something that as you get close to the horizon, goes further away. It's always kind of like an ongoing journey, and you never actually, now I'm there, done, right? But we do have these mini quests where we arrive in between, you could say. But it's an ongoing journey. So it's just, like I said, it's also the stupid things we feel bad and guilty about and shouldn't have done and could have done better, and then we remorse, repent, and and then we move on and we learn from it, right? But we often are, as we know, our worst enemy, right? So we can get in our way more than anybody else because we're with ourselves 24/7. So we're often our biggest obstacle. So what I said, the relationship, the self also is how you react, obviously, to the first two. We all give different meanings. you know, we can become the victim with all of them, or we can learn from them, right, and move on. So it is really the interpretation and meaning, because everything can theoretically be disaster, and then you fall into the victim role. But actually, a lot of research has also shown that humans are quite resilient. We're quite strong. We can deal with diseases and death and losing jobs and stuff like that. The lowest part, actually, that I don't know if anyone read Dante's Inferno. There's like the lowest part, the deepest part, closest. I think it's one step up from the lowest part you can go in hell, is actually betrayal. Heard of that one before, maybe?
Yes.
Believe it or not, betrayal. Think about it. When you are betrayed, for example, in a relationship, then your present, your past, and your future is in chaos. Your present obviously isn't what you thought it was. You're betrayed. And it could also be in a friendship or in a relationship or in a working relationship. I just took out an intimate relationship. Your future obviously is devastated, the plans you had and the thoughts you had, but your past also changed. You say you can't change the past, but what was going on then 2 years ago? What happened when we were in that long weekend in Paris and she wasn't around for a few months or a few hours, right? A few months. You know what I'm saying? So, but you reinterpret in a negative way. We can do this in a positive way, of course, with things that have happened to us in our youth. That's not what we're going to deal with here. If you have had traumas from your youth, you can give them, there's kind of hypnotherapy you can do to reprogram the meaning, because as a child, if your parent says you're stupid, you're a child.
Yeah.
So you believe that,
Yeah.
right? But that's a different thing, right? People do things like I'm good enough, and there was a time people were writing that in the mirror. But you actually rewrite everything. So it's seen as the worst thing that you can actually do to a human. So that's interesting though. So anyway, so that can be shattering. That can be shattering for someone. That can completely take you out of life, destroy you. It can. So that's something usually people really take a long time to recover from, and how deep the betrayal was from who depends on it. So now you understand more what I meant about the dark night of the soul. So we have these things that happen. I mean, society could also mean that you're not competent for the job you're doing, you're fired because you're not acceptable in that position, and that can destroy you, that can cause suffering, that can put you in a dark state. I mean, it's not just money. I mean, maybe you can't pay your rent, maybe you can't feed your family, who knows what results will come from that. Natural disasters, obviously. I mean, everything can be ruined. You can have a pandemic. Imagine that you're not allowed outside. Luckily, we don't do those kind of things anymore. But and then of course, like I said, you can do really, really, really stupid things. So identity crisis, betrayal, lack of meaning. Well, you guys can read that, right? But anyway, so you can understand anything you see here could cause a dark night of the soul. So it's a spiritual term, kind of. It's your soul, and that's a dark night of it. It's not the end, but it's a dark night. You go into the darkness. So I just thought that was a nice play with words. That's kind of the beginning of my journey. So I got into martial arts. It's not going to be my whole personal story, because it's going to be that 20 years indeed. So I started when I was 6, first karate, and then, 5 actually, because I was still living with my father. Remember, my first karate teacher was hitting me all the time, so my father didn't allow me to go there. And then a few years went by. I came to Holland when I was 9, and I did judo lessons, did taekwondo, did Shorin Jikemba. So I already had like a lot of, but they weren't knowledge of martial arts, actually more external styles, but never, like you mentioned as well, I mean, didn't necessarily go deep into this at all. So it was much later that I found out that Bruce Lee did this style, so I started doing Kung Fu. So I started this style Kung Fu in 1999. Then in 2001, I was already running a company for many years, almost 10 years. I had my own market research, actually lead generation, which was quite a thing in that day. It was a call center. People were calling, getting qualified leads, the perfect lead. Let's say if you have a business, and I get the perfect customer for you, and they say they're interested. And anyway, so it was a lead generation. I get a perfect lead for you. Then it started, it's not up anymore, but it actually started with, no, you can't call that a natural disaster, the Twin Towers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that falls on the society.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Those two do link. It doesn't really fall in the natural.
Yes.
So it's society. it's two societies in conflict. Anyway, so the World Trade Center happened, and I had like almost 40 employees. My main client, that is the mother company of my main client, was in the World Trade Center. So that didn't go too well for them. So my biggest client, not to talk about money, but it was like a big amount, it was like 85% of my turnover. And I was doing like over €1 million a year, so it wasn't a huge company, but still 85% was, so they went bankrupt. And they were very nice, and they were a little bit behind on payments, so they were also like almost 2 months behind in payments, and then the next invoice went out, and they couldn't pay that. So my company went bankrupt, and it was a clean bankruptcy because it wasn't mismanagement. It's not like I did something wrong. It was one of those three. Didn't know that back then. And okay, so within a period from 2001 to 2005, a sequence of events happened. Soon after that, best friend of mine, he was a little bit older. He was a piano player, musician, and he was also my manager. He died of cancer with 2 young children. They were like 4 and 6. That happened like a few months later. Then not long that after, we're now into 2003, I got into a divorce. These are all things that happen in life. And I do have to stress, because then you understand the next part better, that we were already kind of like divorced from, what do they say in Holland, bed en tafel? Is that what they say in Holland? Bed en tafel gescheiden, nooit gehoord. Well, so we were still living together because 2 young kids. I have 2 sons. They were 6 and 9. So actually for like 4 years, we were already trying. It's important that you understand this part for the next part. And one point just wasn't working. So the summer of 2003, I moved out. And it wasn't long that after that I met someone. So I tried to, that's why I've told before, it's like, we just divorced 2003 and he's with someone again, but we were already divorced for 4 years. We weren't intimate for more than 2 years, just to give you an idea. I was actually sleeping in a separate room in the house. So we're really doing everything, what you do as a parent for the children. But yeah, I believe ideally as parents you're together, but if it's really not working, then that's also not the message you want to send to your kids. But the research is clear that it's better for a 2-parent family. But yeah, my parents were also divorced. And yeah, I think I turned out okay. Could always be better. So I went into a new relationship in actually January, no, the end of, it was December actually, officially, I met her in December 2003. And we were together for 2 years. And then in April 2005, she died in an accident. You know that from my website, right? Probably. So if you just look back at it, losing your work, losing your home, being away from your kids, best friend dying of cancer, and my girlfriend died in a tragic accident, which I won't go into detail, but that happened. So that's a lot in a relatively short period of time. And please don't feel sorry for me, because it was 20 years ago. I have digested and worked in transform. But if we go back into time, that was, for me, separate from the divorce of my parents, which I was more kind of exciting because I moved to Holland and stuff like that. That was my dark night of the soul. And I remember in 2005, at one point, I was sitting in this furnished apartment, not living too far from my children, saying, you know, feeling like a failure, like, well, my business has failed, even though it wasn't my fault, but marriage, okay, debate whose fault that, best friend, and now my girlfriend. It's like everything really collapsed. That's a dark night of a soul. Like everything seemed to get pulled away. I was lucky, well, actually for like a year I didn't work, but I had savings from the company, and I invested in a Kung Fu school in Den Haag, by the way, together with someone else. Just before that, I had already joined here, because 2003, so that kind of helped me through it a little bit too, and I got a good management job, so, but yeah, I was finding ways of escaping, because that's what we do. That's also a refusal. Like I said, you could put a lot of things. I was going out a lot. You guys may know that. I've been doing a lot, yeah, me, 20 years ago, eh? That's 39-year-old Sifu Paul, eh? Yeah, we'll cut that one out. No, but I was going out. I've never been a big drinker because I can't handle alcohol that well, but I was definitely drinking and doing a few other things that I probably shouldn't be doing. And I think what kept me somewhat grounded is, yes, I had a job, but I was doing minimum there, is having 2 children.
Yes.
But yet, that actually was the first thing that pulled me out. I actually read a quote from Einstein that in the in the middle of trouble lies opportunity, something like that. I have it on a slide, so I'll bring it up. But I went to, it was I would say almost a year around a year of quite a dark period of feeling really victim and sorry for myself and blaming myself, blaming others, all kinds. But at one point I said, oh, like if I continue down this journey, which is like a reverse quest, it's not going to go too well. And I have to be an example for my kids. But you also have to think for yourself, of course, but something like that can help. But of course, obviously, not everyone has kids. Sometimes you need something else, which we're going to talk about. To me, that, well, like, you got to straighten out your life. It really is sometimes, like, in life we have all these options, but sometimes it's a very narrow path. And that's something to be aware of. It's sometimes, you know, I mean, if you go extreme, like if you look at criminals, stuff like that, and if you look at America, 2 chances and 3, you go into jail the rest of your life. So, you know, it's either you're going to go that way, or you're going to go further into the darkness. And then it's not just the dark night of soul, then everything becomes dark. And then you realize what sets us apart, you could say, from the animal kingdom, as far as we know, is that we can choose. We do have choices. I'm not saying I can't go into, I don't know, I'm not inside the head of an animal, but that is one clear thing that we are aware of. You know, we don't have to fly south in the winter, for example. So we're not instinct driven purely, although we might have been in the past. We can always choose. It doesn't mean you always have the 2 ideal choices, sometimes between 2 worst things. So anyway, my choice was, I love my kids, I'm going to be the example. It's not working this way, so I have to find another way. So, yeah, some of that you read on my website. So I already had, at that point, 18 years roughly of martial arts experience. But the things I was learning, you know, to deal with conflicts and challenges out on the street or on the mat, I was like, hey, wait a second, I'm not applying these to my own life. I can use some of these in my own life. And that's where I'd already, like I said, thanks to my mother, since I was 15, I was into Buddhism. But it was all theoretical. I wasn't embodying these things. It was Alan Watts, if anyone knows Alan Watts, who said, you can't get wet from the word water. I love that, very deep if you think about it. I say water like an American, I know. Water. You can't get wet. So in other words, things are always like, even beliefs and ideas and opinions, we don't really embody them. They don't really fully become knowledge and wisdom until you've experienced them. You can't experience someone else's experience. You can go quite far. We can read books. We can follow other people's paths. We can know them. You know that from your own Kung Fu journey as well. Until the Fuxao really works, it's not clear, is it? And even then, it's something like, new little bit, So we are, once again, people aren't trees, right? So we're people of action. We're moving. Every day, you get up in the morning, you have a goal, you act. So we learn through experience, and experience is doing. What moves you? We use words like that, right? It's very moving. We use action-related words. We can't get this just from sitting and reading. So, you know, even if I were to share a lot of things I'm sharing today to someone very young in the sense like, you know, teenager, 14, 13, I think most of them still have to experience most of these things. But hopefully, as we get older, we can also learn from each other's experiences. And we do that all the time. We're even doing that when we go to one of these movies. That's why they resonate so much. That's why that's why we like them so much. That's why why are we lining up and spending money and sitting for a few hours watching this adventure? It's like, because, you know, we're seeing ourselves in that. And movies that move us, you know, aren't the superficial ones. So I went really, really deep into myself, into the first battle, the inner world, and started reading, but it took a while. And like I said, that's what I'm saying, it was a process. It started back then, but it started early and less awareness, you could say. But like I said, into Buddhism and all that. But then I really went deep into that. That's like all I was doing, reading, listening, taking courses, bringing it into the classes, seeing how people responded to it. Because I wanted it to be something that wasn't just for me. I wanted it to be something that would also resonate and actually see it in other people. Because then I knew I had something. But I first had to do it with myself, of course. So I had to transform my life. So within about a year, and time is important, whether it takes 3 years, and I did do that. I turned my life around completely. I started working, well, I guess you say the whole process till it really got to its peak was March 2008. But I was already like, it was going fast. But I mean, within a year, I kind of had the methodology, and then because I had done all this martial arts already and been into it. And then so that we're already looking like around 2006. And then it was like and then in 2 years, my life had completely transformed. That's when I started working here full time. And I left the corporate world. So I was following my passion. My relationship with my kids turned around, drastically improved. And a few years later, that took a little while because I think you need to be on your own for a while then. I met my soulmate, who I've now been with for, in April, 9 years. And that's when I made also the conscious choice, because Sifu Sergio had been pulling on me for 5 years already. I came here 2003, and I was like, this is my passion. I love doing it. So I was teaching here 3 times a week, 4 times a week, but it's not my job. I don't want it to be my job. Like some of you also may decide, this is the place I go to not think about my job, not my work. So I wanted to keep it separate from a long time. But then I realized, hey, this is also my calling. I love doing this. This is my passion. And come on, let's be honest, if you can choose, if work becomes your passion, that's almost like a highest ideal, if that's possible. Not always possible, of course, so there's no judgment. I mean, feeding your family, paying your bills is, of course, #1 priority. I understand that. That's what I'm saying. I understand the privilege that I have to be able to do something that is, and you're a musician, so I'm looking at you, I don't know everyone else's stories. So you know that. Right? I mean, what's more beautiful than if your hobby, passion can be your job, if possible. Doesn't have to be though. Sometimes you have to be careful. Like if there's someone here that loves writing, but maybe you're better to make your money with doing IT. Giving an example, doesn't mean that's less important. Just doesn't have to be your income. Mine happened to come together, but I was already 42, I guess, 43 when I really made it. So this doesn't have to happen when you're 20. So. For all the younger people here, you're even younger than me, aren't you? Yeah. Your life can change at any moment. So usually changes happen, big changes around 30, 35, and then sometimes again at 40. But some people know when they're 17 what they want to do. So I turned my life completely around. I found I was doing the passion love. My health drastically improved. I obviously stopped with all the escapism things, which we won't go into detail. And another cut there. And like I said, my relationship with my children drastic. And then after a few years of being alone in that situation, I was ready for my soulmate. And I've continued improving, fine-tuning my ultimate quest, which is also a coaching program. So I like to do that one-on-one with people, ideally, and also actually small groups. Be honest, I'm not just saying that. Of course, I'd love the more the merrier kind of thing. But in a way, we can go deeper when it's a smaller group like this, because I'm also interested in the feedback and in the interaction and your stories as well. So we're going to take a little break and then we're going to go into that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.